the patient died, and his physician says it's ready to complete, give it up quickly. Cancer is a common disease, but most people can, at the very least, delay spread by maintaining a positive outlook and mental attitude. This was not the case with Charles. Charles had a yellow streak a mile wide. Again, this is fake, but it's very believable. I had another slide I left at home, but there was Lance Armstrong demanding a rematch with cancer because he beat he'd taken him the map the last time. Now he's had so many problems, he needs to bounce back, so he wants cancer to come again. He'll beat it again.
The thing is, you can't police somebody's attitude towards their illness, and that you can't police someone's attitude towards anything in their life.
Exactly.
They have their attitudes, and
You got it.
depend on a lot of things, so it's absurd.
You're speaking like my good friend Barbara Ehrenreich. She wrote a book called Nickel and Dimed. What she did is she dropped out of graduate school and started cleaning houses and working at Kmart, big box stores, to learn what it was like to be poor. And it was awful. And they actually made a play out of her book, and it was a bestseller. She was working on another book, and then she developed breast cancer. And it was so inconvenient when she wanted to get her book done to have breast cancer. So we went to support group and said, I'm mad as hell to be here. It's keeping me from doing the things I want to do. No. If you have that attitude, your cancer progress. So she wrote a book called Bright Sided about it, about how the relentless promotion of positive thinking was undermining America. But then she wanted to publish it in Britain, and he said, well, that won't work in Britain. Call it Smile or Die, which I like the title actually better. So the idea, the pressure was if she didn't smile, she would die quicker. And she and I really promote a liberationist view. If people want to say, fuck cancer, let them. It's not going to affect their physical outcomes. If that's their natural attitude, then let them have it. You can't change the attitude, and it won't make a difference. And a full range of patient styles of coping need to be accommodated to cancer care. People may be familiar with the English writer John Diamond. He thought he had a non-fatal cancer and contracted to write a series of articles on it, and he ended up being a quite serious fatal cancer. And he wrote a book called Even Cowards Get Cancer. He describes at one point, everybody's telling him to have a positive attitude, look at the benefits of having cancer. He said he was tempted to send out Christmas cards, Merry Christmas, may you get cancer this year and get the benefits that I have. He said, whatever benefits he found, he's sure he discovered that some people really cared for him, but he was soon going to lose contact with his wife and kids. He was going to be dead, and there's no benefit to that. And I think it's a very profound book, written with great humor. So I was writing about positive psychology, and then this report came out, Understanding Psychosis and Schizophrenia, from the British Psychological Society, and it was radically denialist, from my point of view. It denied there was any biological aspect to schizophrenia, and at the same time a paper came out about CBT in Lancet, and it was promoted that talking therapies were as effective as drugs in science of all places. The title was Schizophrenia, Time to Flush the Meds. Something you need to know about the media before you beat up another journalist. Journalists often write bad articles, but they don't get to choose their titles. And editors choose them without their permission. And so I sometimes really battered a journalist for good reason, but I went after them because of their title, not because of what they said in the article. In these particular cases, these were terrible headlines, and Professor Toni Morrison from Manchester was giving them this rubbish interpretation of the trial. So I began blogging about it, and when I looked at the Lancet paper, there were actually fewer participants stuck in the intervention group than there were authors at the end. They had, the comparison treatment was ill-defined, but some of them simply were thrown out of routine care because they wouldn't take their meds, so there was no comparison, certainly no control for expectations. A substantial portion of the patients assigned to CBT were getting medication by the end anyway, which was supposed to be the other condition. There was no evidence that response to cognitive therapy was comparable to that achieved with antipsychotic medication. This was totally a sell job. When I started attacking, yeah.
Just on this point, it's become common knowledge that the British government is now intending to put CBT therapists into job centres.
Yeah.
Dame Carol Black has been given terms of reference to go around to basically do another job which is policy-based evidence rather than evidence-based policy. It contravenes the UN CRPD, which we've been about enforced treatment. I just think that this is like one of the most pernicious things that's happening in the UK at the moment, because basically they're telling people that, a lot of people with severe and enduring mental health difficulties, that if they don't accept this so-called help, then they will be made destitute, homeless, and
okay, but let's put the social justice issues aside for a moment, which are overwhelming. Let's look at it from a therapeutic point of view. It makes no sense to try to establish a therapeutic relationship, a therapeutic alliance under those circumstances. It's absolutely idiotic from a clinical trial point of view, service delivery. But it's being pushed for political reasons. It's an evidence-based treatment, but there's no evidence will work for that purpose.
Well, we're hoping that the psychological community,
they won't. They'll weakly take a stand against it, but they see the opportunity, the job opportunities. There's a real problem with the training of clinical psychologists in the UK. They basically have to work for free. Maybe if they have this pressing need for CBT therapists, they'll start paying for the training. I keep badgering them to take a stand against it and say they'll boycott it, and they keep ignoring me.
Well, the only group that's emerged has been the psychologists against austerity, who are doing what they can.
Right.
But,
and they normally get involved. Peter Kinderman, the president-elect, normally gets involved in that. He's careful not to bite the hand that hopefully will feed him. Boy, I'll bet he'll be writing to my university about that comment. Hey, Peter, I'll give you the email of my dean.
That's pretty important.
So I started going after the Understanding Psychosis and the book and the Lancet, and there was one blog about how little evidence there was in the Lancet paper. I got in a fight with Lancet because I accused them of publishing a paper that trial was registered after the start of the trial. And they said that was libelous, and then I said, please check the date of the registration. And they apologized to me and allowed me to state that in a letter. But then there's a ridiculous thing that's caused me lots of problems. I found that the president-elect of the British Psychological Society believed that Nazis are promoting a biomedical model, and that's traceable back to Nazi Germany, and that he was worried about being castrated, not because he was Jewish and the Nazi psychiatrists would get him, but because he had a brother who was odd, and that maybe he would be castrated as a way of sterilizing them. And after all, the right is rising in Europe. So I found this ridiculous thing and started saying that he was trivializing the Holocaust. And that's when he wrote to my university saying that I was rude and offensive, and that he threatened legal action against the dean at Groningen for paying my salary if I wasn't muzzled. He similarly threatened Sterling, and it caused a big laugh among my colleagues in the Netherlands. What court are they going to sue us in? Does that mean we have to go over to London and face this ridiculous man? If he thinks that someone's going to cut his penis and balls off because his brother is odd, he maybe needs psychological help. And so it didn't go over, but it pissed me off. And then ultimately he came out and said this advocating CBT for psychosis was not about CBT, it was about the politics of psychologists getting control from the physicians of the treatment of schizophrenia. And I don't know why he says these things, but I nailed him on that. And so now, stay tuned. Okay, but I have a history of attacking members of the psychiatry department in Oxford, not because the members of the psychiatry department in Oxford, because they say dumb things. There was a trial of mindfulness-based therapy, which they claimed was ready to roll out to prevent relapse and recurrence, and I point out in my blog from the clinical trials point of view, it did nothing of the kind. It was just hype on the part of the self-promoting author. He then contacted the British press and said I had deviant American views and that he could recommend people who would be more appropriate to comment on his mindfulness trial. And then they came out with a trial which they claimed that an anti-worry treatment would reduce paranoid delusions. And the author of that, Friedman is his name, writes for The Guardian and started promoting his treatment and his self-help book in The Guardian. And so I went after the media, and The Guardian is now reconsidering their oversight of mental health treatment. The BBC changed their headline 3 hours after my blog attacked them. So I don't know, maybe just random events not related to what I'm doing, but I keep going at them. So I'll skip the slide about PACE. This is just a description that's provided by the investigators. Much of it is controversial, but it's treated as if it's not controversial. It's treated as factual. I just did that in case there was anybody here who didn't know about PACE. Much of what is said there is untrue, at least anything of substance. But PACE really attracts my attention because it's so goddamn bad. It's bad in its conduct, it's bad in its reporting, and it's fascinating that it's going unchallenged. And it's uncritically being passed on by journalists and the media with clear harm to patients. And there's murky politics around it all. So it's something I was ready to drop my interest in positive psychology and focus on PACE as an opportunity to teach people who have no interest in chronic fatigue or ME or post-viral syndrome, but are interested in how to interpret a clinical trial. It's grist for the mill. I can hopefully imagine sending my blog to graduate students studying clinical trials, and they'll learn how to conduct one badly and how to get away with reporting one badly. It's a great case study. So, my first blog post pointed out, and you have to understand, there's nothing that I'm saying in my blog post that the patient groups haven't been saying already. But I've got more of a standing somehow in this messed up system that I get taken seriously. So the first non-controversial point that I raised is that if you do a clinical trial, you don't look within group differences, you look at between group differences. And if the investigators had paid attention to that in the follow-up study, they had nothing to report because the group differences had gone away in the follow-up period. And to me, it's shocking. And I don't believe that the PACE investigators are incompetent. They know how to run a clinical trial. They knew what they were doing. So the other aspects is they did some really dodgy things. They randomly assigned people to groups. And then they're doing a follow-up based on the initial randomization. But in between the end of the treatment and the trial and the follow-up, they often let people go to other treatments. So they weren't being evaluated on their initial assignment. They were evaluating what was happening 2 years in a group that was very difficult to describe what was going on. And they also attempted to influence participants' reports of outcomes prior to the collecting of the data. They sent them newsletters that had glowing reports of how well people were doing. Now we know that the people assigned to the standard treatment, the specialist treatment, they didn't like that. a significant minority, I think about 41%, said they had no expectation to be helped by that. So there was obviously a lack of balance to begin with that was compounded by allowing people to switch treatment and by the letters. These are terribly dodgy things to do that anybody who's ever taken a course in clinical trials knows you don't do those things. And so they reported the data based on the initial assignment, not on the treatment that people were getting at the end of the follow-up. And then they used voodoo statistics to try to correct for all this. A statistician would tear their hair out looking at what they did. So then Keith Laws jumped in and pointed out the dissatisfaction with the standard medical care. There's really no care for a lot of patients with this condition. They were desperate to try something new. They were attracted to the promises that were made about the treatments being preferred by the investigators, and there was no positive expectations or hope in that condition. So it violated the basic condition of clinical trial. There was no equipoise. Ethically and clinically, you expected there to be a balance between treatments, and if there isn't a balance, then you shouldn't be doing a clinical trial. It's not ethical. Okay, and then he started getting into the mess trying to interpret the outcome variables. And actually, if you really get into the tables, the only treatment that showed not showing improvement was GEP, the grade exercise. It was the only, even people in standard care, with the passage of 2 years, had gotten a bit better. Okay, so what we're accusing the investigators of in our blog, and it's upsetting that we are established senior faculty. We're saying that they inappropriately attempted to influence outcomes. We're saying that they're allowing patients to get other treatments, nullified it as a clinical trial. We're saying they distorted their interpretations. And these are serious charges. So essentially, two academics were saying what all the community was already saying, that there's a major mess up in PACE, in the conduct and in the reporting. And what's amazing is that no one was catching it. And they must have known what they were doing. We can only assume they believed that the editor and reviewers at Lancet Psychiatry would let them get away with it. And obviously they did. They didn't get caught in peer review. Competent peer review should have caught it. The media should have caught it. They should have gotten somebody independent of PACE to say, does this claim make sense? Or is it just an exaggerated self-promotion? And obviously there's something wrong in Britain that this didn't happen. And I personally think the PACE investigators were not inclined to challenge the release of their data before. They certainly can't now. They're in a bind. If they try to stop release of their data, they've basically been accused of hiding mistakes, and it won't stand. The scientific community won't stand. So that I think they can risk further damage to the reputation by fighting the appeal, or risk damage by things that are going to be revealed by the data being available. Because it's a Freedom of Information Act, it becomes available not only to that patient who asked for the data, but everybody in the world. PACE is at a real crisis. I think the psychological conceptualization of chronic fatigue, ME, is at a real crisis. The game has changed. And so I'm arguing that they shouldn't appeal, and they probably won't. They only have a week now. Next Monday, they have to have their appeal in. Otherwise, the data get released, I think that's a week or two later. I think we're going to be seeing the data wonderful things hidden in that data. We can look at the antigraphy data, and we can see that there's no relationship between the physiological objective measures. Yeah.
When we do see the data set that is revealed,
Yeah.
how can we be confident that that is all of the data set and not a sanitized or selected or altered version?
Well, it's possible, but then it moves into the criminal realm. Altering clinical trial data is a very serious offense. And I think that the commissioner's already indicated that it's now going to be contempt of court. They've had an order, and if they alter it that's not consistent with the spirit of the order, I think they'd be in danger of criminal contempt. I'm not a British lawyer, but I would, as an American, I would be scared shitless of that possibility. I mean, having caught some Americans altering data that was shared, I know the bind they're in, and these are prominent people in the United States. I would not want to be a case investigator. Yeah.
This has really been the last time for Cherry anyway in doing analysis of the data. So the stuff they're publishing now is as far as they can go, because the data has its limits, and so it'll all be after the fact anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, and this whole thing about intellectual. The thing I run up against in the States when I try to get data is they say it's intellectual property rights. We're going to publish more data. Hell, it's been a long time since the initial publication. Go on with the additional follow-up, but you're not doing additional follow-up. You've got the follow-up, you've got the initial data. What intellectual property is at stake? It's a rubbish argument. And no one, now that they're being criticized by the scientific community, the game has changed. They can't get away with that.
Well, I've got a question, and I'd like to make a comment. The question is about the relationship between mental illness, Simon Wesley, the whole so-called biopsychosocial model, and the excellent work that you're doing, but in terms of as people as a disability grassroots campaign, it's important that this gets out into the public domain.
Absolutely.
And that's not something that academics are really best placed to do.
Right.
It's something that we are experts in as campaigners. I'd like to, if I could, just share a letter which we wrote to the Guardian, which is less than 200 words.
Sure.
Which was published on September the 12th, 2012. So I'll be as quick as I can.
Speak up, so because it's good for posterity, it's going to be on the YouTube. You want to come closer to this?
Yeah, please. That would be very helpful. Thank you. So there's a letter to the Guardian published at 2100 hours, 12th of September 2012. And it says, this week, the 6th International Forum on Disability Management, IFDM 2012, takes place at Imperial College London. It is sponsored by some of the world's largest medical insurance companies, Unum among them, and speakers include DWP Chief Medical Advisor, Dr. Bill Cunningham, and Professor Sir Mental Elwood, formerly DW Chief Medical Advisor and Director of the Centre for Psychosocial and Disability Research at Cardiff University, which was sponsored by Unum from its inception in 2003 until 2009. Unum's website states that during the sponsorship period, a series of papers was published identifying the range of factors that determine why some people become long-term absentees. The Cardiff papers advocated a biopsychosocial model of disability, which Unum says informed its approach to medical underwriting. It is the same approach upon which the current ATOS, now Maximus, Work Capability Assessment, WCA, is based. Concomitantly, the company were advising the UK government on welfare reform. On 4th of September, during an emergency debate on ATOS and the WCA held in Parliament, Labour MP Kevin Brannan demanded to know if DWP Minister Chris Grayling was as concerned as he was that ATOS's Chief Medical Officer is one Professor Michael O'Donnell, who was previously employed as Chief Medical Officer by the American insurance company Unum, which is being described by the Insurance Commissioner of California, John Garamendi, as an outlaw company that has operated in an unlawful fashion for many years, running disability claims denial factories. We condemn the Royal Society of Medicine's decision to hold IFDM 2012. By doing so, it has lent an aura of legitimacy to a pseudo-scientific approach to disability that is as far from evidence-based medicine as it is possible to imagine. It is an approach that continues to devastate the lives of patients, scores of whom are tragically no longer with us as a direct result. These for-profit companies should never have been permitted to sequester such power and influence over public health and social policy. There may be clear conflicts of interest at stake, and the public interest now demands an urgent and thorough independent public inquiry into the relationships between and roles played by senior Unum, Atos and DWP staff in the creation of the current government disability assessment regime, signed by John McArdle and Dr. Stephen Party, Black Triangle Campaign, and 449 co-signatories with the link. And just to say that this guy, Dr. Bill Gunyon, has now jumped ship, and he is now Chief Medical Officer with Maximus, who are taking over the contract from Atos in the disability denial factories for this.
Well, I think it's very important. It's an excellent letter, and I think it's very important that activists like you keep following the money, keep following the people.
We're about protecting people from harm. This is it.
Once I started getting this pace thing, it reminded me so much of the Jack Nicholson movie, Chinatown, where everything is connected to everything, and you think somebody has one role, but they have another role, or they've switched roles. And to me, it's just so amazing to an outsider that this shit goes on in the UK.
But it's neoliberal
Undeclared conflict of interest.
It's the privatisation of our welfare state.
Exactly.
It began with Labour under Tony Blair in 2001.
Right.
And this is the logical, end game.
But see, as an academic, for me, I have to translate this into undisclosed.
And we have to translate your work into stuff that's going to change social policy.
I'm only, one 68-year-old guy with dyslexia. I can't do everything, but I'm willing to work within limits.
We couldn't do what you do.
But I'm a sharpshooter. Don't ask me to drive a tank. That is, I can take down a badly done trial. I can point out it's badly reported.
But you are taking it down.
It's excellent. Yeah, well
sure
done.
as hell nobody else is. I mean, apart from
Thank you.
patients
Yeah, but it's
and
a
patient charities.
yeah, but
And
it's
my
going to get
argument
more.
is
It's
that-
going to get more trendy to do what I'm doing.
But on a personal note, I'm bored sympathy because I've had it for 33 years. I'm bored with it, but I have to talk about it because when I was diagnosed as a 19-year-old, it was albeit it was poorly understood. The mechanism wasn't understood, but it was a neurological illness diagnosed by a consultant neurologist. 33 years later, psychiatrists have taken over my illness. They've taken it over. They've distorted it, and that's why.
Well, I
that's
think-
why we've got nonsense like this, because they had the results before they started.
But
The
They had
patients
the
are being
results
driven to
before they
suicide.
started.
But I think
That's
what's
what's
happening
happening.
now.
Important.
Think of that sign. The St. Nicholas Church is open. I think this the
They wonder
game
why
has been
patients are
changed.
hostile. They wonder why patients are hostile. We've already had our lives
We're losing lives.
ruined to in different ways.
Unquestionably,
But,
irrefutably.
Yeah.
what these people are doing, I mean, I don't, the PACE trial, I just know, I mean, I know it's dodgy just because it is, without having to go into all of this. It's been dodgy.
But the
before it
spell
even
has
started.
been broken.
So thank God for people like
Keith
this.
Laws.
Nobody's listening.
Keith Laws
Agreed.
is
No
a
one's
Brit.
listening.
Keith Laws is a Brit. I'm an American.
I mean, there's really no one more peaceful than me, but I'm a militant.
I can
Because
understand
I
that.
comment on my illness with honesty and lived experience, but I'm a militant.
Good for
I
you.
mean, the fact that you examine the methodology, as you said, the very work of you, the work that you're doing to complain about journals, about papers that are written that are methodologically unacceptable, to raise those things are absolutely critical to the work that we do.
Okay, but I'm
to
just getting started.
Yeah.
Anybody know what meow means? It's an American term. It's not a sound cat makes. Yeah, I'm doing. It's meow for me right now. the moral equivalent to war. It comes from William James. And ironically, William James referred his sister for treatment of her neurasthenia to Weir Mitchell. But the idea is that it's from William James that I was already busy, shooting up bad clinical trials. I was busy going after journals. Now I'm going to refocus the activity on PACE and the associated ideology. And I'm only one person. It's not a war against people, it's a war against practices and assumptions. And rather than doing the positive psychology thing, the focus of my work is to see how much we can degrade bad science being badly reported. Expose more of the bad science, the QRPs of PACE, establish culpability of journal editors and reviewers in questionable practices and getting out there, educate media and journalists on the responsibilities that they have not exercised in reporting PACE. They're going to be called to task.
How are you going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
If we try and educate, and you have to remember, I've seen fights sitting here, but I'm ill. I shake after a week of all of this, and I'm crying at another bloody article demeaning me and people with
Well, I'll tell you. So my recent fight with Prospect, with what's the Spectator, the editor won't apologize, but you can be damn sure he won't be talking about the patient trolls anymore.
Yeah, and that was disgusting.
Yeah, well, okay, but that's one thing, and so I stepped up and I called him an asshole and called his associate editor a bitch. I got slapped on my hand, even Close got into the act of slapping on my hand. I should have said it was a bitchy thing to do rather than she was a bitch. The language game would have been okay.
I think you said actually, what your comment was it was a bitch comment, which was basically it's a bitchy comment. That's how any reasonable person would have taken
Exactly.
it.
The problem is you can't say it's an asshole comment to a woman. There's a gender thing about insulting people.
It's preferable to be calling it a bitch comment.
Yeah, exactly. I say, I was tempted the other day to say to Ben Golake when he sent me a nasty message, that was a bitch comment. And it was very appropriate, but it's an odd thing. There's somehow gender specificity to bitch and asshole. But anyway, but the issue was I got slapped on the wrist. Who cares? A patient didn't get slapped on the wrist, and I'll survive that. Yeah, exactly.
They block us. We're blocked.
I know. Well, I got blocked by Isabel, but I don't give a shit. I don't need her to follow me.
The sad thing about Isabel was she I've seen a lot. She was actually trying. She's a young journalist. She's naive.
But she shouldn't be on the same editorial board with Ron, whatever his name.
He's awful.
And
but she was trying.
So the idea is, I'm an outsider. I don't give a shit.
I would question the ethical position of people like Wesley and Aylward.
In time.
We confronted him at that particular conference, and I've got film. We have film and he lied to us. We had it on film. He couldn't sue me for saying that, Mansell Aylward, you lied to us, because I've got film of you saying that you were reconsidering your position, regarding the biopsychosocial model and the harm that it's been doing.
Yeah, but I go after
these people are in the pockets. It seems to me that their number one priority is profiting themselves and their own academic careers at the cost of human life. And if he ever sees this, I accuse you of it, sue me.
Well, change is going to take a while, but it's
meanwhile, people are absolutely perishing.
Yeah, I know.
That's how urgent it is.
I know. All I've got is my pen or my type. And
there's no criticism of you. It's just that I tend to get quite upset.
You have a right to be upset.
I see the suffering that my friends are going through.
You have a right to be upset. And what we've got to do is focus it. And
your work is incredibly important, but there should be more
people join it. It'll get more trendy to attack PACE. There's a guy in Johan Denolet in the Netherlands who had a theory of type D personality causing people to have shorter lifespan once they got congestive heart failure. And I started attacking that. He got so upset he took out 2 pages in the national newspaper saying the Americans were invading and attacking a Dutch idea. And now that the idea is dead, you know, and John Ioannidis, the famous methodologist, wrote a paper about my taking down this model, the decline effect. And he talked about the politics that we're maintaining. It was a dead idea and how it would go away. And these things happen, and it's to me frustrating that what I'm doing is nothing that different than patients haven't tried to do.
Well, you know,
And they're saying the same things.
Wesley is now the president of the Royal College of Psychiatry.
Yeah, I know, but we'll take down some other targets of convenience. Who's this guy, Crick? He's one of the other, you know, he's part of the, you know, the gang promoting a psychosomatic model. He's got articles coming out this week or next in Journal of Psychosomatic Research. I'll be waiting for it to come out, and it'll be down there on the floor. And you know,
Well, if you could publish your article to our website, that would be most welcome. Thank you.
the Creative Commons license, people need to know this. The Creative Commons license of my blogging is I don't give a shit what you do with it. You can translate, you can chop it up, you can give it away for free as long as you say where it came from. Take it. It's, yeah.
Have you any idea how many people are taking your material and using it and getting a positive effect out of it, as opposed to just creating
I get
noise?
notes of people using it for discussion in journal clubs. I get notes of people thanking me for it. They said it was embarrassing to them. They presented one of the articles before to the class, and everybody approved of it. And now that they felt so shocked, they couldn't avoid seeing the problems that I had pointed out. But I'm one person. I'll just keep blogging away. But it is something I'm committed to doing.
I'd like to thank you for your for the work that you do, personally,
Thank you.
as an activist and a person with disabilities.
Well, it's a lot more meaningful than taking on the damn coaches of positive psychology and their crap self-help books. There's a time and place for that. But right now, I'm taking care of that. And I want to expand to other questionable research practices. Like, it's fascinating that the largest trial before, pardon?
Sorry, just talking to myself.
Oh.
I'm just agreeing with that wee talk bit about the maintained illusion that there's validity to psychosomatic model.
Well, you know, like one of my next targets after I discuss the control group problem, and once I get through discussing it, everybody will see, and they'll say, Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot, you know? How did they get away with not having an adequate control group? But my next target is, there's the largest trial